Hey folks, I'm Andy Kidd. I'm the host of the Mojo WellBeing podcast and the founder of the Mojo WellBeing. At the Mojo WellBeing, we believe that every human being with a heartbeat has a superpower, and we're curious about yours. Our vision is to inspire well-beings and leave things in a better place for people and the planet. Our passion project has started with our podcast, which features a number of exceptional humans from all walks of life, but they have a few things in common. One is a deep commitment to service, and two, they've traversed life, they've faced challenges, and they've got some incredible insights and stories to share that may inspire you, your posse, your family, your friends to live with more joy. One of the things I'm really proud about at the Mojo WellBeing is that each of our podcast guests nominates a for-purpose partner or charity. And our commitment at the Mojo WellBeing is to contribute 5% of our revenue lines back to our for-purpose partners in perpetuity. That's something worth getting behind. If you want to get behind what we're doing at the Mojo WellBeing, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at Mojo WellBeings. You can join us on Instagram at Mojo WellBeings. You can subscribe on Spotify, Mojo WellBeings. Anyway, I hope you enjoy our podcast series, and we'll see you on the other side. Well, I'm really excited to introduce today's guest, none other than Rachel Slade. Rachel Slade has been a group executive in Tier 1 banking in Australia for a number of years. She's one of the most respected bankers in the country. And today's episode traverses Rachel's life in corporate, but also it's deeply personal. Rachel talks about her upbringing, some of the challenges she's had in her life, and life in corporate Australia. Lastly, Rachel talks about her for-purpose nomination, which is -18, which she'll talk about later in the episode. So strap yourself in. Hope you enjoy it as much as I did having the conversation. Rachel Slade.
Andy Kidd.
Welcome to the Mojo WellBeing podcast. And my first question, ever since episode 2 with David Galbraith, who are you?
Who am I? I think that might be the hardest question we get all day.
In life.
In life.
Yeah.
In life. I think you're right. It's I think it's a really tricky one. Because in life, I think you have a whole lot of different personas. So as I think about that question, you sort of start coming up with a list, right? So I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a leader, I'm a friend, I used to be a sister. We can talk about that later. But when I think about the who am I describing myself, which is also really hard, isn't it? It's always easier to get somebody else to describe you.
Yeah, I'll do that shortly.
Even though you might not like the answer.
It's not bad, the answer.
I would say, I'm a pretty curious girl. I still sometimes think of myself as a girl, despite how many years have passed in my life from the country.
Yep.
I love learning. I love spending time with people. I love creating environments where people can be the best they can be, whether that's my friends, teams that I work with, my kids, my family.
Yep.
So that's.
And how many kids, Rach?
Three.
Three boys.
Well, three kids born boys.
Yes.
So 3 different sets of pronouns in my household. So.
And we're going to talk about that later, aren't we? Because your for purpose connects to that.
Yeah, it really does. So I've got my oldest identifies as a he, they. My middle one identifies as non-binary, so they, them, and my youngest is just a straight little he, him.
Yeah.
I say little, but he's just turned
What's he,
17.
they, as opposed to he, him?
So that's where you're a little bit more flexible. So,
Okay.
yeah, so these are all the things that,
Mm.
I've learned being a mum to these kids over the last probably 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I have a non-binary child as well, so I sort of can relate to that. Really hard to get your grammar right initially, actually.
Yeah, it feels a little bit unnatural, but over
Yeah.
time you get used to it.
Yep.
And I think, for us, one of the things that's really important is you give the kids permission to correct you. But
Mm.
somebody else gave me this advice actually about not apologizing, because
Mm.
then kind of it sort of puts it back on them and makes it
Yeah.
feel like, it's something that they need to worry about, but it's actually
Mm.
something you should be thinking about to respect
Yep.
them and what their identity is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And tell me, so rural upbringing initially, rural Victoria
New South
or New
Wales.
South
Yeah, born
Wales?
in Armidale.
Yep.
I've lived in the city for a long time, so we were there. But my parents were born in the country, so we were
Mm.
country people, not farmers.
Yep.
But I still feel like people sometimes ask me if I'm from the country, even though I didn't live there for a long time. It must be just a sort of a sensibility that stays with you
Mm.
for life. Maybe it's about smaller communities. I don't know.
When did you? What age were you when you left Armidale?
Oh, like 4.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain mindset. So I'm fourth generation South Canterbury farming on my father's side. And, I still remember in the summer holidays going down to the farm, the best times of my life.
Yeah.
And I think that rural environment can often be brilliant for kids and quite formative in terms of learning how to solve problems and all sorts of things,
Yeah.
and community as well. Did you mentioned you moved away when you were 4, but I'm still sure there was still a strong connection
Yeah,
to
we've
the
been,
country.
back over, lots of years, not lately because everybody's gone now. But it's interesting as, as I get older, my parents get older, just starting to talk to them a bit more about, what drove them to leave Armidale and come to Sydney and how hard it was. So, actually just recently we had a conversation about, they came to Sydney with 2 little kids and no money, and it was pretty tough.
And tell me about your parents. What did they do?
Yeah, they well, lucky I've still got both of them.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, me too.
very lucky on that regard. Mum had a good scare at Christmas time, but she's still hanging on. It was her birthday yesterday, so
Oh, wow. Happy birthday, Mum.
she's in good health. But my mum was a school teacher for her whole career. It wasn't her preferred pathway. She would have liked to be a doctor, actually, and living in Armidale, got accepted to go to medical school in Sydney, but
Oh, wow.
Mum and Dad didn't let her go, so off she went to Teachers College.
That'd hurt.
Yeah, I mean, well, she still talks about it. So, but look, she was a terrific teacher, and I think she really did love that career. And my dad was an academic in the first part of his career, university lecturer in sort of landscape architecture and heritage and conservation, and then went off to start his own business doing aesthetic impact study work in the heritage and conservation space. So, became a bit of an entrepreneur in his, I don't know how old he would have been, in his 40s or 50s maybe. And, so what was great growing up was having a school teacher mum and a academic dad. They were always on holidays when we were on school holidays. So,
yeah, right.
there was a lot of time in a boat, time in a caravan. But yeah, we had great.
Lots of camping trips. And
Yeah,
all
that kind of holiday.
Awesome. And you were one of 2?
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so I had a younger brother. Unfortunately, he passed away. Where are we now? 2019. We lost him.
How old was he then?
He would have been 48.
Okay.
So yeah, not a lifetime, but
Was that, sorry to interrupt,
yeah,
Rachel, was that during COVID?
just before COVID.
Right.
Yeah, so the year before COVID.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, result of, let's call it mental health issues and substance use
Yep.
issues. We tried very hard to support him, but in the end, you can only give people what you can give them.
Yep.
But yeah, terribly tragic. He's got two kids. They're older than my kids actually. He got married quite young. Still really close to his kids, and they're wonderful kids, and they've come out the other side of that. But
Yep.
but I think hard for me, but unbelievably hard for my mum and dad. I don't think you ever get over something like that.
No.
I think there's the loss. There's also the guilt, obviously, about just asking yourself every day what else you could have done.
Yep. 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 And 2019, you would have been at the NAB at the time. I'm guessing.
Look, 2019 was a pretty it was a pretty wild ride actually. That year, notwithstanding losing my brother, that was at a time where I was on the executive team at the NAB. We had an interim CEO. We'd been through the Royal Commission, got kind of dragged through the Royal Commission, had some awful outcomes, lost our CEO and our chairman, had an interim CEO. So we were really in kind of rebuild mode. It was a very intense time to be an executive in the bank.
Yep.
Having said that, maybe we'll talk about this as well, incredible learning experience. And some of the things that I reflect back on at my time at NAB were things that I probably started working on. Things that I'm the most proud of were things I started working on at that time.
Yeah, well, I guess when you're at ground zero, it can't get any worse, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it too is like, what's your attitude to that situation? And back to the who am I question. I'm a really, really optimistic person, which doesn't mean I'm not a realist, but I'm always looking for how can we answer to a question, and we've got a terrible situation in our house at the moment where we've had this awful water leak, and the house is a construction zone.
Yeah,
and we've had to move out of our bedroom. We're sort of camping in our own house, and my dad was asking me last week how it was going, and I said, "Oh, it's not too bad. This, and this." And his first response back to me was, "You are such an optimistic person. I cannot think of anything worse," was what he said. But
well, that's in the context of last week. You mentioned that your husband's
broke a rib.
A rib.
Yes.
And your son's having an operation.
That happened yesterday. He's home, so he's in good shape.
And okay, so there's plenty going on.
There's always something going on.
Yeah, well, that's the life thing, isn't it? Well, full disclosure to our audience, you're an old boss of mine, Rach.
I am an old boss of yours.
And actually one of the best I've ever had. And the reason for that, you always seem to make really complex things simple, and very, very good at that. And you're always very, very present, which is sad to say was unusual in that environment. There are probably 2 or 3 or execs, Jim Tate's another one, that, when you're interacting, you actually felt honoured and respected. But yeah, your ability to mobilise to make incredibly complex things simple was pretty awesome. And tell me about your education, because you started doing one thing and then you switched.
Yeah. Look, so at high school, I ended up being I was a maths and science kid. So I think you could do, it's a long time ago now.
They call it STEM now, don't they?
I think you had to do 10 units. Oh, no. Well, 10 plus English.
Yes.
And of my 10, 8 of them were maths and science.
Yeah.
So, I was a maths and science kid. So it seemed logical that I should go and do something like that at university. So I went off and enrolled in an electrical engineering degree. So this is in the late 1980s.
With all the boys.
Well, yeah, there were, it was a class of 237. I remember, I don't know why I remember the numbers so specifically, but there were 7 women. So I was pretty popular.
7 and 2. Oh my gosh, that's a very small percentage.
Yeah, wasn't hard to make friends at uni.
No.
No. Although there wasn't a lot of time for that because it was electrical engineering. I don't know if it's still the same, but it was like 40 hours of FaceTime a week. And there was none of this online university. So you were at uni pretty much, 8 till 6 every day. And sometimes longer, sometimes into the evening.
It reminds me of my university, Rachel, which was originally an agricultural college. And for that reason, there are a lot of blokes. And the boys had to line up at the pub to talk to a girl. So it sounds like a similar ratio, but anyway.
Yeah, so I started engineering, and it was a sandwich. It was called a sandwich degree. So you do 6 months of study and then 6 months of industrial experience.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. And this was also, I also didn't have a lot of trouble getting a job because late 80s, we're in sort of affirmative action territory. So pretty much anywhere I sent a letter to was willing to hire me. And I went off and I worked at Dick Smith Electronics.
Really? We didn't discuss that last time.
Didn't we?
I don't think so, no.
And Dick Smith Electronics, this used to be when they had their own, I worked in the R&D department.
Oh,
so, they
like a
had
head office function.
A head office function where they were developing products. I don't know what I actually developed, but so I went and did that for 6 months. But during that time, I really decided that I didn't want to be an engineer. And while the maths and science, and I still quite enjoy maths and science. I've got a bit of an engineering brain. I love knowing how things work. But it just wasn't exciting enough for me, and it wasn't sort of bringing me enough joy. So I ended up taking a year off, actually, while I thought about what I wanted to do.
Well, it's good to make the decision early, right?
Yeah. Took a year off. I was still worked at Dick Smith for a while. I worked in there. That's where I got my first sort of retail leadership experience. I was pretty young, but I was running their biggest store.
Yep.
So that was quite fun.
I'm grinning because my first job was selling mobile phones
and
computers and similar.
I remember our biggest sellers at the time were answering machines. Remember those?
Yeah. We sold them actually.
Had little tapes, tiny tapes in them. So I worked in retail there for a while, and then I decided to go back and study economics.
Yep.
So I went off to a different university, studied economics, which was a much more manageable workload. But also because I'd been at uni and worked for a year, I didn't really live the uni lifestyle much. So, I went to uni and I did the work and I had a few friends, but I didn't spend a lot of time kind of hanging out on campus. I had a really interesting job at the time with a guy, through a guy I met at Dick Smith, who worked for this tiny little company that sold equipment to radio stations.
Okay.
So, but all kinds of equipment. So from massive transmitter towers, on the top of mountains to digital equipment that went in the studio.
Yep.
So I used to be their sort of office manager. So that was super interesting as well because I got to learn about how small businesses worked. I got to, I was accounts payable and accounts receivable and customer service and, and go and help on the trade booth at the radio station trade shows. So again, not a lot of women around. There's a bit of a theme here, I think. But you know what? In that business, I never had a problem with anybody sort of disrespecting me because I wasn't a man in that environment. I learned a lot. Did an honours year in economics and then had to figure out, what I was going to do with that. And at that time, all the other people in my honours year were going off to work at the Reserve Bank or Federal Treasury and that also just seemed a little
the
bit...
pure economist role.
Yeah. So, and then I had this moment where I thought, okay, so like you're now like a failed engineer and you're also not going to be an economist. So
You did do honours, Rachel.
Yeah. So what are you doing? And I interviewed with a few different firms, a couple of banks actually at the time, and a couple of industrial companies. Like Unilever was they were a very competitive employer.
Big company.
Yeah, at the time.
Yep.
But I ended up going to work at Anderson Consulting. And one of the reasons I ended up there is that my brother-in-law...
This is prior to rebranding Accenture, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. It was when they were still attached to Anderson. And my brother-in-law, he's now my brother-in-law, he wasn't my brother-in-law at the time, worked there. And he said, look, if you're not sure what you want to do, it's a great place to start your career because you can learn a lot. You can see a few different industries,
different assignments.
Yeah, and you'll figure it out.
Yep.
So I ended up there, and I ended up working in their practice that was called Process. So they had a change management practice, a technology practice, a strategy practice, and a process practice. And in the process practice, you pretty much learned how to code.
Oh.
So you ended up being like the coding analyst on these massive...
You were writing code.
Systems integration projects.
Yeah, okay.
So look, I had a bit of fun doing that for a while, and you got to go to... had this great training facility off in near Chicago.
Yes.
So you'd go there for a few weeks at a time with people from all around the world. And you would, of course, you learned to code, but you learned all about how kind of systems hang together. I don't just mean technical systems, but I learned quite a lot about technology. And that turned out to be very, very helpful. It's still helpful today, even though it was like years and years ago. But I didn't really want to be a coder. And so I ended up sort of sidling my way over onto a few strategy projects and ended up moving over into the strategy practice and ended up almost exclusively working in financial services, mostly in banking. And it was probably then that I really developed this real love for banking. And people find it odd when I say love and banking in the same sentence. But the thing that really attracted me to it, and maybe it's the engineering part of my brain and the economics and the purpose part, was I really understood how important banking was for individuals, for businesses, for the economy, and that sort of mediating role that banks played in making the world work. And I found it fascinating because the first part of banking I ended up working in was this part to do with trade finance, and it was fascinating. Right? So international trade, and it was just a great way of really learning a little bit more about the world. Because you've been to high school, you've been to university, you think you know everything. You don't know anything, right? This is what I sometimes remind my kids of. Two at uni, one about to go to uni. But you don't know anything. And so really starting to understand, and because of my thirst, I think, for learning and problem solving and just that ability to have my hands on those sorts of things was a lot of fun. It was hard work, but a lot of fun.
Yep. I think curiosity is a massive asset, isn't it? With the people around you, the people above you.
I think it is. And I find myself, you know how you get a little bit more honest as you get older?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
well, I find possibly a lack of curiosity in another human the most unattractive personality trait. I don't, and maybe because I don't understand it, and therefore I'm kind of countering what I tell, what I also tell my kids all the time is you've got to try and understand that somebody else's perspective. But I find I don't understand a lack of curiosity, so I just think it opens up so much possibility.
Yeah, we'll get onto it later, but
Yeah.
I reckon a lack of curiosity is often overwhelm and being more in the red than in the blue.
Yeah, maybe.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get to that. So, you're working for management, one of the big management consulting firms. You're getting all this exposure to financial services companies. So what happened next?
Yeah, so what happened next was, and there's a bit of a theme, when I decide I'm like, I don't want to do something anymore, then I make a change, right? And it wasn't that I didn't enjoy it. I got a lot out of it, but I was working on a project which and I won't name the client because it's sort of not their fault, but where I was pretty sure that they weren't going to do anything with the work that we were doing.
Yeah.
Right? And so I started to feel quite frustrated about that. And I think it was probably also at a time where I'd learned quite a lot and I'd come to the realization that I was going to be A, much more useful, and B, have a lot more fun if I was actually inside an organization rather than advising them. And so I got in touch with one of my clients and who'd actually hired somebody else out of the firm, and I just called her up and said, do you need another one of those?
Yep.
And she said, that would be great. And so I took a pay cut. Wasn't a big pay cut, felt big at the time, and went over into industry. That's how I ended up at
Was that the pack?
At Westpac, yeah.
Westpac.
Yeah.
When did you join Westpac,
1999.
Rachel? Okay. Yeah, that's when I first got to London. 99.
So 99 I joined.
Tech bust in 2000.
Yeah. So we went through, the Y2K, potential Y2K disaster.
Yeah, that was bloody... I was working for Credit Suisse at the time and in operations, and that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And it was just a non-event.
Yeah. It's funny though, isn't it? Because you've probably had the same experience. Every now and again, some system falls over because of a date problem, but it wasn't a Y2K thing. It's something else. You've either you run out of space because you've run out of dates, or
I think it's one of those things, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? If no one has done anything or not done enough and it had gone belly up, then people would have looked a bit silly.
Yeah, so I was there a long time, 17 years.
Yes.
Did a lot of different things there.
And then you and one or two of our other very capable leaders that happened to be women, Julie Rinsky and Karen Ganshow and a few other people, there was a bit of a well-worn path over from Westpac to the NAB, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was over time. Yeah.
Did you find, was there a big difference in the culture? And you would have moved from Sydney to Melbourne at that time, did you?
Yeah, we moved. When I started at NAB. It was a really good time to move. And I say that because, it's a pretty big change when you've been somewhere for 17 years. And
your family's Sydney, aren't they, Rachel? So, yeah, okay.
So, but my kids were, my oldest at that time was just about to go into high school.
Okay.
My husband is an academic, so his work is reasonably portable.
And what's his field?
Mental health, drug and alcohol research.
Okay.
So he's a professor at Sydney University. And so we made the decision to, make the move down to Melbourne. Haven't looked back, actually. It was
Melbourne's a really cool city, I have to say.
Yeah, it is a really cool city. We found it very easy to integrate into.
Yep.
Kids landed brilliantly. It's very easy to get around. It feels a lot smaller than Sydney when you live in it. I think the geography is just a bit friendlier. It's not as beautiful for sure, but the beauty of Sydney makes it hard to get around.
Yeah.
And Melbourne is a lot easier to get around.
Well, as you may know, Rachel, I'm rather obsessed with riding bikes.
Yes.
And Melbourne is such a cool bike city, I have to say.
Oh, it
it's
definitely
brilliant.
is.
I
Unless you're
always
looking for
take
a
my
hill.
bike to Melbourne when I go. I don't have a car, so I've got no choice. But no, it's a beautiful city, great transport. To be fair, Sydney has great transport as well. And very cosmopolitan, isn't it? You know, the arts and the cafes.
Yeah, and I love that the fact that the sports in the city.
That area with the MCG
Yeah,
and
you got
the
the
Rod
tennis
Laver
centre,
and
the
everything. It's
MCG,
cool.
food, arts. Yeah, it's a very easy city to live in.
Doesn't sound like you're wanting to move back in a hurry.
Not rushing back.
No.
No.
Okay.
Not rushing back.
Cool. So you're currently gardening. Well, they call it gardening.
Well,
What's gardening leave, Rachel, for our audience?
I like to say, actually, I'm doing preferment.
Preferment.
So, yeah.
I like that word.
I didn't invent it. I can't remember who I stole it from. So you can't credit me with it. I definitely pinched it from someone. But you know, I'm finished full-time executive work.
Yes.
And at the moment doing the things I prefer.
I was going to say, preferment sounds like having a great time.
I am having a great time. And not just because, you know, I get to travel and hang out with my kids, although those things have been fantastic. But also just having the, I think, headspace to really think a bit more deeply about what I want to do. And that's very difficult to do if you are
super busy,
consumed in particular. And I say a corporate job because that's what I know, but I can imagine there are other things that consume you in the same way. So able to, you know, have that time for reflection, able to, you know, not have to feel like I'm squeezing the things I really want to do into my life.
Lots of trade-offs.
Yeah. So having, you know, less trade-offs to make. So a really, really special time.
Yeah, I have to say, in the periods when I've been not working, best time of my life, you know, because, same reason, you get to have a think about what next, get to breathe.
Yeah, I think definitely took me a little while to, what's the word I would look for? To not feel like I had to be doing something all the time.
It's like when you go on a holiday and, you know, you go on a holiday and, you know, the first few days you just feel, I think your body's been running so hard that when you actually stop, you actually feel sick.
Yeah.
And then it takes a few days before you can actually, you know, just relax and adjust to the pace. So what's bubbling up for you in your contemplative preferment period?
Well, I think what I'm working through now is how do I put together a portfolio of things that I really want to do. So it's not about, you know, stacking all the hours in the week with things to keep me busy. It's choosing a few things to invest my time and my sort of personal capital, I don't necessarily mean money, into. And, you know, for me, probably at the top of that list is purpose. So
that's what the word that was going around in my head when you were
I've got to
explaining
feel
that.
like whatever I'm choosing to spend my time on is having real impact.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily mean that impact has to be huge and at scale. So I have been spending some time, you know, doing some coaching and not...
You mean one-on-one,
exec
type coaching?
Yeah, but not, you know, with as a favour to, you know, for a friend of a friend. I've been doing a fair amount of support for people that used to work with me that had love me to have a look at their CV or meet them for a coffee. But when I do that, the commitment I've sort of made to them, and I warn them up front, is that I'm not there to be kind to them.
Yes.
So I'm there to help them.
Yep.
And of course I like to think I'm a kind person, but
Yep.
because that willingness to help, I think, comes from kindness. But it's giving them sometimes, that brutal candor is the most helpful thing you can give to somebody. And when it's a limited time, I want it to be helpful.
Yes.
And sometimes people will say, "Can you look at my CV and can we meet?" And I'll send them some feedback and I say, "No, we'll meet when we're ready for you, when you're ready to answer these few questions." For example.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a little bit of that. So that's what I mean. Like, the impact doesn't have to be huge. I love banking, as I talked about earlier, but I don't want to be a banking executive. Doesn't mean I don't have something to offer in financial services, whether that's, in an advisory space or a directorship space. But yeah, so putting together a portfolio of things that have purpose, but also some fun.
Fun's important.
Super important.
Yes. In fact, Sir Wayne Smith, my first Smithy over there, 3-time World Cup winner, 2 with the men, 1 with the women. When he took over the Black Ferns, the women's team, they'd been through a full independent review. There were complaints around mental health. They sacked the whole coaching team. He'd taken the pension 2 days prior. And Mark Robinson, the CEO, who the universe bumped me into when I was on a bike ride in New Zealand, who I met, who, he said Wayne Smith and John Kilwin are like 2 Tongas in New Zealand. A Tonga's a treasure. But Smithy had 240 days from the time he took over to winning the World Cup final.
Wow.
And prior to the few months, and this is during the COVID period, the women had won 5 out of 6 World Cups. But during that period, they were getting smashed by England and France, mental health issues, dysfunction. And one of the first things he did was introduce club nights on a Tuesday where the girls would get together, they wear their blazers, they're allowed to have a drink. And he said at the time, the other staff thought I was mad, pro athletes. And he said, but ultimately, we've got to have some fun.
Yeah.
And it's so, so important, especially in teams that are under a lot of pressure. That time to just get together.
Well,
maybe
remind
not
yourself
talk about
who you
work.
are.
Yeah, exactly. So what's fun? I mean, you've just been to Italy.
I have just been to Italy. One of the things I've been doing for them is learning Italian as well.
Ooh.
So I'm probably doing a little bit of, taking my own medicine, so putting myself, a little bit outside my comfort zone.
Yep.
So I went to Italian school in Italy for a few days, and
Awesome.
that was pretty confronting, I have to say. I was in this great class with I was the only native English speaker in the class.
Oh, wow.
Which was fantastic.
So
the other people in the class were from
all over.
Yeah, Germany, Brazil, Spain, Singapore, Japan, French, Ghana.
Wow.
And Israel.
That would have been fun.
It was fun. And, we weren't speaking English anyway. So,
yeah.
But then I had to practice, right? So,
yes.
And then I'd give myself a little pat on the back if I managed in my, journeys around Italy to have a full interaction somewhere in a shop or a cafe in Italian.
Do the Italian waiters get as disgusted as the French waiters?
No, they do not.
Don't.
They're very, very friendly.
Okay,
very,
good.
Very friendly. Depends where you are in Italy. I mean, they're always friendly. Depends where you are in Italy about whether they sort of revert quickly to English when they... But I think anywhere you go, people are grateful if you're, making an attempt to...
Yeah. Similar to surfing.
Respect the culture, right?
Similar to surfing, people often say, Maroubra, there's a really aggressive crowd there. They're only aggressive if you're disrespectful. If you drop in on waves and, I think kindness goes a long way. I'm going to switch gears, Rach.
Okay.
So you are the first person where we're going to introduce a theme around conscious business. And I've got a few guests in the pipeline where we'll have a real focus on this. But we were chatting earlier and I mentioned, I grew up rural New Zealand. When I did my coaching accreditation, integral coaching, you get profiled when you get these things that come up called meta programs, and there's about 60 meta programs, and generally you have 5 or 6 that run you, and a couple of mine are global, micro. I'm global. Don't like the details so much, right? Another one was black and white. So I used to be, and still am when I regress, a very black and white thinker. But the other thing about those things is they're also your superpowers. Because black and white thinking can, when you want to get focused, can be a massive asset. But
they can, when it's overplayed, not so.
Yeah. And they can also be your nemesis. And I guess the key in coaching is to, one, notice when that thing comes up, and then work out, well, where do I index myself on that continuum to best serve me? And it's fun. It's ironic when you do the coaching, you're supposed to be learning how to coach other people, but 95% of it you end up coaching yourself, and it's not pretty. But so this black and white thinking, when I first joined the banks, and generally I'd worked similar to you at Dick Smith. I'd actually worked for a company called Ben Rumble Communications in New Zealand, and they were the fastest growing mobile phone seller. They ended up being the biggest mobile phone retailer and selling phones in the mid-90s when you had Motorola bricks and these tiny phones. But the point is, it was a small company and it was fun. It was like a family. And if you wanted to do something and get shit done, you could just, people say, go for it. Then I did that for 4 years or so, ended up being a regional sales manager, and then I went to London, and that's when I started working for the big banks. I worked for Credit Suisse and then Deutsche Bank, and was exposed to a whole other world and a different culture. And from an ego perspective, I thought, banker, blah, blah, blah. And I felt really pleased with myself. The money was good, contracting. Came back to Australia and did a brief stint at AMP, but then went to Westpac when you were there. And I used to get frustrated sometimes because my first job was in customer relations, where all the complaints in the bank came, and my job was to look at the root cause of those complaints and try and work with the business to try and improve the customer experience. And I used to sometimes get really frustrated that it didn't seem like to me that these big public companies would always do the right thing by their customers, and they tended to put shareholders first before customers and staff. And as I've thought about that, over the years, I've learned. I did a bit of work in lean, and one of the things you learn in lean is to ask why.
Yeah.
And if you ask why 5 times, you'll always get to the answer. And in this case, I only need to ask why about 3 times. And where I always get to is these big public companies, and now, we've got the big 7, the tech companies. The reality is that the CEOs, I actually liken them to an elite athlete. An athlete that has to play 80 minutes of a game, and at the end of that game, the score is the score. There's no wriggle room whatsoever, no excuses. And the analogy with CEOs and corporate is they have to front up to investors every 6 months, and their reward tends to be based on the annual profit announcement, which sometimes means they don't always, in my black and white world, they didn't always do the right thing. And when we did our sort of little warm up interview in November, one of the comments you made, which really made me think, was, well, it's actually, there's still human beings or people in those companies. But then I compare big corporates to a company like Patagonia, and maybe I'll hold that thought. But, did you feel some sort of incongruence or discomfort around sometimes being, because you're a group executive, you were accountable on that 6-12 month type result. Did you feel like sometimes you were compromised around doing the right thing?
No, not necessarily. I think incentives are really important, and we should talk a bit about that. Because I think part of the nub of your question is, are the wrong incentives driving that kind of behaviour?
Yep.
And maybe they can, but I don't think the ownership structure is necessarily the cause. I mean, think about and I'll come back to some of the things I've been involved in, but think about amazing transformation and value creation in companies like Microsoft under Satya, for example. Huge cultural transformation. You have to have more than 6 months in mind. You have to have more than 6 months in mind to set out on a culture transformation. Otherwise, why do you care, right?
Yep.
And I think it's less about incentives. They're important, but they're changing as well. We should talk a bit about that.
Oh, okay.
And as much about, maybe this comes back to the people point, it's about leadership and governance. So incentives are changing a lot, right? Just talk about, the industry I know the best, which is banking, obviously. First of all, there's huge deferral of remuneration for executives. I think
I didn't know that.
CEOs are out to 7 years, group executives over 6 years.
This is in terms of the options and some of those other things, Rachel?
Yeah.
Okay.
So hugely deferred,
That's
both
great.
short-term and long-term rewards. And then the scorecards that those are assessed on increasingly have financial performance as, I can't remember the proportions at the moment, but maybe it's 40%.
Okay.
So that scorecard's also got a lot of customer measures in it. Usually got customer measures. It's usually got colleague measures. It might have something to do with ESG or climate, depending on the organisation. So I think the scorecards are changing as well.
Yep.
And I think, Andy, to your point, which is sort of where your question came from, historically, I think potentially in some organisations you got some of those outcomes. But actually, that assumes that shareholder value and customer outcomes and colleagues and communities are in conflict with one another. And if you extend your horizon about how you think about creating value, you can't create shareholder value without creating value for customers. Otherwise, what kind of a business have you got? And that's why I think some of these things are changing, and expectations are changing from investors and also from communities and customers, right? So, and from employees. So, you know yourself that, I know my kids, if they talk about, where they would work or where they would invest their money, they're much more interested than probably I would have been at their age on the, the human rights record or the customer outcomes of organisations. And you're seeing lots of organisations measure themselves on things like NPS and other things. But, I talked about that rough ride of 2019, the year that my brother died. But the rough ride in NAB was, we were facing this self-assessment that we'd done, which is public, about, where we thought that we had, work to do. And, one of the areas of that was that we hadn't put the interests of customers first.
Mm.
And so it was really hard work, but I'm so grateful I got to lead it, leading work on basically the name for the program was Getting It Right for Customers.
Yep.
And of course we had to do a whole lot of analysis and understanding of outcomes that customers were getting. But the other thing we had to do was drive some change in the culture to introduce more questions aligned to a framework, which I won't bore you with, but the framework was all about customer outcomes. But the big question that we had to ask, and this is as an executive team, was not can we do this, should we do this? And they're the cultural shifts in organisations where things change.
Yep.
And you have to have everybody around the table has to believe it and absolutely argue it, debate it, understand it. And then you're making different decisions. So some of the decision, we eliminated 150 fees. Did they cost us money in terms of revenue? Absolutely.
Yep.
Did they hit the bottom line of the organisation in the short term? Absolutely. But you make those decisions with a true belief that in the long term, it's better for customers. Your business can't survive without customers. And those customers you want your customers to be advocates for the business, because then you don't have to advertise for new customers. They're telling their friends and family. And so I truly believe in earned growth. I would call it earned growth, where your customers bring you new customers. And you only get that if you're delivering real value for customers.
And what's the, I'm mindful that Australia has over 4 trillion in super.
Yeah.
And how much friction is there on that short term between your team at the time, your posse that are wanting to do the right thing, looking at a longer term horizon, and those institutional investors and fund managers that are putting pressure on to get a short term result?
Look,
or is it more about managing expectations?
There's definitely something about managing expectations, because actually what they're more interested in, investors, yes, they're interested in the result, but they're just as interested in the predictability of the result. So what they want is consistency. And you only get consistency if you're thinking long term, because otherwise you take a sugar hit for this half, you look for another one for the next half, right? And you end up thinking about it like you're managing political terms, right? And you're like, oh, well, it'll be the poor sucker after me that can deal with the next half because I won't be here and I've already been paid. And that's where I think some of the change in remuneration structure is really helpful.
Yeah, okay. I didn't realise that those horizons had pushed out.
Oh, massively. But also, the investors are looking for that consistency, because one of the features too of this market is a lot of the big listed companies that make up, a huge proportion of the ASX, therefore a huge proportion of Australian superannuations. They're all yielding stocks as well. So they need to be producing returns, to be paying dividends to investors to get reinvested. I mean, the other thing about public companies, and of course, full disclosure, I've worked most of my career in public companies, which doesn't mean I have anything against private companies at all. But I mean, they're not all bad, right? They've funded tons of innovation and productivity and progression, and so I think back to this leadership and governance question, I think that's more the opportunity than thinking about the ownership structures.
Yeah, and leadership's temporary, culture not so temporary.
Yeah.
But governance, that's important, because if you get that right, it doesn't matter who passes through the turnstiles.
Yeah. I think leadership is temporary, but if the attitude of the leader, and, I've heard a couple of leaders say this, and, you hope you get more like it, is that, their job, back to your sporting analogy, is they're putting on the jersey for the team, right? And they're leading this team through the period that they're the captain, if you like. and their job's to leave it better than they found it. They want to.
Yep.
And so I think that's the way
Mm.
to think about leadership.
Well, that resonates with a Kiwi,
No doubt.
with All Black lineage. So you and I have both studied economics.
Yes.
Do we have an oligopoly in our banks and supermarkets in Australia? Because the banks still have over 90% market share. Oh, actually, no, they don't.
No, they
it's
don't.
in the 70s. Mortgages and deposits, I think it's in the 70s now.
Yeah. Look, I think
Feels like people are just too lazy to move.
they do move. I tell you what, we've definitely got concentration, right? We're a small market. Those are the facts. There is plenty of competition though, right? So you can open your deposit account with, I don't know how many. I think the last time I looked, there were at least 120 places you could move your money to. And
people don't seem to do it though, Rachel.
well, they do you're right. They tend not to move their transaction accounts. Because have you tried to do that?
Well, I have actually.
Yeah. I mean,
Revolut.
Right. It's possible, right? And they do more and more move their kind of yield chasing, like your term deposit around. Because also today you can do it. You've just done it. You can do it all digitally. You don't have to, you don't have to fill in a paper form and go and stand in a queue, and you can do all of that. So there is plenty of competition. I think the other thing I can certainly talk to banking. Can't really talk to supermarkets. Although
you shop.
I do shop. My mum and dad, they're massive Aldi fans, right? So they're doing their own.
Well, good on them, but it feels like 90% of the population are still going to Woolworths and Coles aren't exactly in good favour at the moment with some of their pricing behaviour. Yeah, and I feel like sometimes people are just so busy and so overwhelmed. I go to Butcher Crowd, for example.
Yeah.
Because I know, being a fourth generation Kiwi farmer, that by doing that, the farmers are not getting, excuse my provocative language, but shafted by the big supermarket chains. The quality of the produce is amazing.
Is it more expensive?
Maybe, Rachel, but when I go into a Coles supermarket and I see the mince and the colour of it, I go, oh my God.
Right.
And I these days do a lot of training, so what I put in is actually really important. So I don't think it is more expensive, actually.
But I think the point you're making is a great one, right? Which is like, how do you change it? Is you got to have consumers who are educated, who understand what their choices are, people who make different choices, who are going to support smaller businesses and keep the competition going. But I think so Butcher Crowd's introducing competition. You've got the big internationals like your Aldi. And Costco and others. You've still got your independents like your IGAs. I'm a massive IGA fan.
Me too, actually, independent. And I was shocked when I went to Aldi a couple of years ago in Ballina, and I did a shop, and honestly, it was like 40% cheaper. And I went, what is going on?
Well, my parents laugh at me because although they've changed it now, I used to be terrified of going to Aldi because the checkout experience was so confronting. I could never keep up with the.
Oh, right. Too fast.
It was too fast.
They do great winter ski sales, Aldi. Anyway.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm not sponsored by Aldi or Butcher Crowd.
No, but look, I think when in a small market here, you've also got to look at, where are the opportunities that come with you're naturally going to get a few big players. You end up with consolidation because of the size of the market. It's then like, what do those organisations do with that scale and the benefits of that scale? They're huge. They're big employers, like all of those organisations we just talked about. whether it's the supermarkets or the big banks, huge employers. What are they? How is that contributing? They all pay a lot of tax, so nothing's, as I say to my kids all the time, nothing's simple, right? There's no simple answer to any of these.
There is when you're a black and
challenges.
white thinker,
There
Rachel.
is, isn't there?
So that actually is a sort of segue to a segue. So Woolworths announced last week, I was listening to Alan Kohler on the ABC, they're retrenching a significant number of roles, and artificial intelligence has got something to do with it. I caught up with an old boss of mine, actually, that you and I both know, who works at Oracle.
Right.
And a few months ago, I think Oracle have got 106 or had 160,000 heads globally. That got chopped to 130, and the goal at the end of the year is 100. And obviously that is leveraging this incredible technology of generative AI. And, one of my mantras is technology for good.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this whole AI thing? Because it's bloody scary for some people, especially the white-collar work. Not so much the tradies, the master crafts people, that be very, very difficult to replace them.
You're not going to let AI cut your hair, Andy?
No, and I'll certainly, if I'm doing a reno, it won't be a robot. But yeah, well, how are you thinking about AI? Because I think most of the big banks have cut jobs in response to AI.
I sort of think about it like, maybe this comes back to my, underlying characteristic of my personality, which is that I'm massively optimistic, right? So I think about it and very pragmatic. So I think every generation, this is our generation. Well, there's a few generations alive, right? But it's our generation's experience of what technology is going to do to change society and the economy, and it's been happening for millennia, forever.
Yeah.
So the question isn't, is it going to change? It's sort of, how does it change? And then what do you do about it? And so no doubt there are going to be tasks. Let's call them tasks. So we kind of take the people out for a minute. We'll bring the people back later because the people are important, right? There'll be tasks which turn out to be better done by an AI agent. And I say better because they'll be cheaper. There'll be less errors, lower risk. Right, lower cost. Actually, for a whole bunch of reasons, it's objectively better. And some of the jobs that AI agents are replacing are jobs that are incredibly hard to recruit for. People stay in them for 6 months.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right, so they're not coveted jobs. I think the more interesting question is how does it change, like, jobs of the future? What are the jobs of the future? So I think it potentially allows some jobs to become more interesting and more creative. Because imagine, so take a call center where a whole lot of the work, let's call it the lower value, more
repetitive stuff,
the stuff it's really hard to recruit and keep people to do, is better done by an AI agent. And talk to lots of customers. They'd do anything other than make that phone call anyway, right? So if it can get dealt with by an agent efficiently, great. But the complex, hard things will be the things that need a human-to-human connection. That'll be a more interesting job. And then the people who are, because you always have to have humans in the loop with any technology, particularly if it's dealing with sensitive issues. Those are jobs that didn't exist a few years ago. So, training, controlling, managing the risk around it, teaching. So I think there's opportunity there. Which is not to say, so yes, I'm optimistic about that. I think there's a lot to be done around education, And not just education of the risks, but education on how to use it. Like this country, I saw this survey results. I can't remember where it was, run by one of the universities and one of the consulting firms. Was within the last 12 months, which was talking about global adoption of AI. And what I found fascinating was that it were countries that probably had more to gain or less to lose, depending on which hat you put on, were much more advanced in their adoption of AI than Australia. And a lot of that was because they'd spent more effort educating their communities about how to use it. Instead, what it showed in Australia was you actually had people in workplaces using it in a way that it wasn't sanctioned to be used, and they were using it because they were terrified that if they didn't use it, somebody was going to get there faster than them, and that exposes all kinds of risks, right? So it needs to be well managed. It also obviously needs regulation and governance. There's a role for governments, but I still think I'm always excited about what technology unlocks. So even if you're not talking about AI, think about technology means that it's connected families all over the world. It's connected businesses can operate globally. It's democratized education in a way that, could never be done before. It's, enabled people that never had a voice before to have a voice. But, you said technology for good. I think that's important. I would also say I think we've got to be really intentional about how technology gets used.
Yeah, and I've been the provocateur. I'm actually a massive optimist, but I'm just, we're having a bit of back and forth. And I have a dream, Rachel, that a large corporate organisation, let's say for argument's sake, they've got 100,000 employees and they have an attrition rate of 20%. So 20%, 20,000 of the 100,000 each year naturally leave the organisation. And rather than apply this blunt instrument of sacking a whole bunch of people, they just say, okay, we're not going to rehire. We're going to retrain people. Why doesn't that happen?
I think, look.
And again, my black and white.
Yeah, well, my experience would say that it does happen, right?
It hasn't been my impression, and the Oracle example is a good one, right? Atlassian, another one. They shed, I think it was 1,100 odd people a few months ago.
What if they actually don't need those people, though, Andy?
Yeah, that's fair.
So maybe they don't need them to grow their business. And I think that's why back to your black and white. There's no simple answer for any business. It's most businesses' dreams to be able to scale their top line without adding cost to the bottom line. If you can still deliver the same outcomes for customers, the same outcomes for communities, they're delivering better outcomes for shareholders. You can reinvest capital into growing your business, but you don't have to keep adding costs, right? So, and I think that AI brings real opportunities for that. But is it? And then the question is, whose job is it to be retraining the workforce of the future? And I don't think there's a simple answer to that either. I think if you're a large organisation, you naturally have a responsibility to be making your contribution to the workforce of the future. I think governments, and by the way, governments are massive employers as well, don't forget. We often talk about their I think the biggest employer in Australia would be the New South Wales government.
Outside of government employing people, obviously government drive policy.
Yeah.
Do you think the government in Australia has been proactive enough? I mean, AI is moving at such a pace. It's breathtaking, right?
Yeah, I don't know enough about it to have a strong view on that. I mean, it'd be hard to say at any time that governments couldn't do more. But I know, from my experience working in financial services, that the governments are very active in the whole tech and particularly cyber space.
Yep.
And as they should be.
So a contrast to a public company construct, I've got the company equivalent of a man crush on Patagonia.
Yes.
And mainly because a few years ago I read the founder's book, Let
Right.
My People Go Surfing, and I'm a surfer. So, but I guess the theme in the first half of that book was there were two things. One is Patagonia is a private company, always has been. So they've had a real purity around their core values and the fact that they're basically here to save the planet, will do their bit to save the planet. And they've recently moved to a new governance structure which actually protects those core values for the next 50, 100 years. They're one of the first companies to be B Corp certified. And from my understanding of B Corp, it means that the companies have to meet a set of obligations that mean when they design and build products, they have to do it in a much more sustainable way, less sort of carbon footprint. The last part of the book was all about beautiful design. So Patagonia, I have a lot of their products. And the reason I buy their products is I know they're probably going to last me a lifetime. You know, I bought a jacket from Patagonia that's specifically made for bike packing. When that jacket dies, maybe in 30 years, if I take it back to Patagonia so they can recycle it, I'll get a 40% discount on the next product. And I think Patagonia and I think Harley Davidson are some of those few brands that thrive in a recession because their brand is so good and they have such a loyal following. You know, and that's where I make that comparison with public companies versus non-public companies. Is there something in that, you know, when you think about a cooperative, a private company, you know, the cooperatives where often the customers own that entity, you know, there's banks out there that where the staff and the customers have significant ownership in the US.
There's lots of customer-owned banks in Australia.
So do you reckon that drives a different set of priorities?
I think they'd be different. I don't know if they're better. I don't know.
Maybe we need a mix.
I think we do need a mix. And I think, you know, capital goes to different places for different reasons. I tell you what you just kind of made me think, though, when you were talking about Patagonia trying to enshrine their values through governance. It sort of feels a bit like counterintuitive, doesn't it?
In what way?
I hope they can, right? Because you can certainly say you can't change the poster on the wall, right? Which has got the values written on it.
Yep.
But values get lived every day in how the organisations run and how decisions are made and how people show up and how they treat one another and how they treat customers. And so there's got to be more than that, right? And maybe that's what comes with the governance. There's
Yeah, you know, and I know when you know, the quality of the staff and the people at Patagonia is outstanding.
Yeah.
And they employ people.
Well, that means they've got really good systems, right, in how they hire, because there's not one person making all those every single hiring decision, right? And there's no reason that a public company can't have that. I'm sure they aspire to. Amazon would tell you they have that. If you talk to them about how they recruit. And so I back to I think the discussion we had earlier. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm not agreeing with you. I don't think it's necessarily public versus private. Yep. I think it's more what's the commitment to and it's not just the culture. But if you say we want all of our employees to look like X and to behave like Y, then where's the commitment to, back to your 5 whys, to all of the systems and processes, the boring stuff, the hardwired stuff that has to run all day, every day without exception to make that happen? And how do you know that it's happening? So, and there's no reason you can't have that in a public company or a private company. You just have to have leadership that cares enough.
Yeah, okay. That's fair. I'm going to switch gears again.
Okay.
Sort of. This is the second part of the segue, which is tech.
Yeah.
Because it actually leads into mental health.
Yeah.
It leads into the effect of technology on our younger generation, our kids. And I'm going to actually read some stats for you, and I'd really be curious to see how that affects you, and also your thoughts on that, because you got 3 kids. So I'm just going to read those stats. I looked at some stats a little while ago that I sensed they were not great, but when I saw them, I was a little bit shocked. 32% of the global population are experiencing mental disorders, and that's a figure that's been stable since 2023. 44% of young adults are currently reporting mental health problems. 52% of young adults say that heavy use of social media and digital devices negatively affects their mental health. And I checked this next stat because it said 52%, and I thought, I wonder if that's a typo. It's the same, but 52% of respondents want their company to implement mental health support. And I went and found another one because I know how distressed the younger generation are feeling about the environment. Like they can't do anything about it. 60% of young people aged between 16 and 25 are very or extremely worried about climate change, with many reporting feelings of anxiety, sadness, helplessness, and fear about the future. And very recently, Meta were taken to task and were fined for a young woman was successful in a finding where the way Meta had designed their social media had a detrimental effect on that person's mental health. So, we've now got often the massive tech companies refer to as the big 7. It's about to be the big 10 when you take into account some of the new IPOs coming up for some of the Gen AI companies and Starlink, which I think has just happened. But there's a huge, massive amount of power residing in pretty much 10 organizations. And, it's like with social media, we just, I don't think anyone could have seen it coming and what effect it was going to have on our kids. But, when you hear those stats as a parent, how do you feel about that, and what comes up for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd say I wasn't surprised by those stats, and possibly because my husband works in mental health, right? I wasn't surprised by them. But they're still distressing, right? So they're not shocking, but they're distressing. But then you quickly get to, because practical person, optimist. Well, what do you do about that, right? So should we turn off technology? No.
Yep.
Right. For all the reasons we talked about before. I mean, look at the magical world we live in, which is enabled by all of this amazing technology. Imagine you couldn't get on your Teams meeting or your Zoom meeting, and you couldn't talk to your brother in London, or you couldn't access a free program on how to build an AI agent from MIT, or you couldn't. So, there's again, it's not simple.
And you actually said something to me when we had lunch in Melbourne before our interview,
Yeah.
which really made me think.
Uh-huh.
And it was around, again, black and white thinking. And there's a lot of, New Zealand's actually a good example where there's huge pressure on the government to introduce a social media ban for 16 and under. That's not going to solve the problem. And something you said to me really made me think, and that was, well, you know, for some kids, that's their only connection.
Yeah.
So how do you create an environment enabled by tech that's safe? And you also talked about gamification and a few other things, which I think is important.
Yeah. And that's the challenge, right? Because there's no question there are kids in the world who've suffered terrible things in their lives because of social media, whether that's and particularly around, you know, online bullying and trolling, and no question.
Yep.
There are other kids who have amazing online communities.
Yep.
And it's part of their, you know, how they thrive as a human. It's where they find their people. So it's very hard to say, I need a blunt instrument to turn that off here, and I'll just accept all of the collateral damage that happens over here.
Are you saying it's not black and white, Rachel?
I'm saying it's absolutely not black and white. I'm also, and this will be controversial, except in our household, like we actually still, those stats are right. This is what people are saying. We actually don't have enough evidence. We don't have enough real evidence of the true relationships between these things. And I think about I'm not belittling the issue. It's an issue, no question. But until we know how's the issue manifesting, what part of it, because what does social media mean? Does it mean like I open up my Instagram and I look at a few pages? Does it mean I engage and start talking to people I don't know? Does it mean I send a few Snapchats to my mate? Does it mean and it's very hard to get that information in a survey. And I know this because I watch people like my husband try and design good surveying tools to get this insight. So what can we do, right? So you're back to it. Part of it's hand-to-hand combat on educating consumers. So, for example, conversations I have with my kids, and they're all older than 16, so you know this ban that's here is not impacting them anyway. But we're always talking about how do you understand why you're seeing what you're seeing, and how are you making sure you're doing your own research to get yourself exposed to the other side of the argument. I mean, I try and do that myself. I read news sources that I really am not interested in, but I read them deliberately so that I'm getting
once you go down that tech rabbit hole,
more balanced.
You just get driven more of that content, right?
On the other hand, I really love it when I'm trying to find something and suddenly this magical ad gets served up to me of exactly the thing I wanted, right? I'm like, that is like miracle. I don't find that creepy. I find that incredibly convenient.
The phone is listening.
Right?
Yes.
So there's an education piece.
Yep.
But I think some schools are doing there's a role in schools, there's a role for parents, there's a role for the tech companies to put controls in, for sure.
Yep.
There's a role for companies that are employing people. It's got to be a kind of all hands to the wheel thing. But it's like the modern version of whatever it was before we had social media.
Yep.
And so I think it's just an evolution in...
I think AI is actually the next little challenge.
Well,
right?
One of my kids came home and said, "Oh, Mum, AI videos are getting worse because they're like learning how to do videos from other AI videos," right? Like, and they're probably right, but there'll be some, somebody will find their way through that. But, but so whatever the next, I don't know, call it a threat, social challenge, I think is maybe a useful way to describe it, is has to have kind of responses, multi-pronged responses.
Yep.
But think about coming back to the incentives conversation we were having about, short-term driving for short-term results.
Yep.
how do these platforms make money? They mostly make money through advertising. Advertising is all about attention of the consumer. And so the incentive, then that becomes the product. So it's sort of how can the model change so that the technology is being used back to that intention in a more intentional way for all the good that it can create rather than the other parts. But I still want my ad for the thing I want to buy. Exactly the thing, in exactly the moment, at exactly the price, right? I'm very happy to go have
I got served up this movie trailer thing the other day, Rach, that was exactly aligned to some work I've been doing in a paid subscription plan in one of the large language models.
Right.
It's the only way it could have got that insight.
Yeah.
And it freaked me out. But it was exactly what I needed at the time, and I went, wow, that's really useful. But I went, oh, how did they know that? So I have a dream.
Do you?
Yes, that we can use technology for good and actually design and build stuff that will enhance well-being, safer for our kids. That'd be cool. Yeah.
Well, I think that's possible.
I do too. Okay, so Rach, I got you to fill out a wee survey or a questionnaire.
You did.
And it was based on the Mojo, or the More Joy well-being wheel, and it's based on the 12 segments of the wheel that I've developed over the years, which I'll talk about on YouTube, social, funnily enough, soon, and explain a bit more. But obviously you went through 12 segments and covered different, things like mind, breath, water, sleep, nutrition, movement, etc. What came up for you?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to, refer to my notes here.
Something you prepared earlier.
Well, it's most of my chicken scratchings here in my book. Well, the first thing that came up for me is, because there were those 12 segments in the wheel.
Yep.
Like some of them I probably don't think about at all.
Yeah.
On on any given day. But
for example?
So breath.
Yeah.
For example. And maybe that's why I was amber on. I should say I was mostly blue. And
Do you find yourself going blue a lot?
No, I manage to breathe.
So you do breathe.
I do breathe. Yeah. I breathe very purposefully when I'm in my Pilates class. I can tell you that.
There you go. Yeah.
But I should say on the 12, I'm mostly blue, and I think and we'll probably get to this. Part of the reason I'm mostly blue is because I'm in this great preferment part of my life, right? So low stresses, and a level of, I think a base level of resilience is higher than if you've got a lot of other things going on in your life. So breath, I don't really think about that often. So it was, and the other one was spirituality. And that was one, because there was homework, right? If I was amber, I then had to think about what I was going to do about it. And so on spirituality, one of the things that I started thinking about was like, also maybe I haven't thought about it properly, because I wouldn't describe myself as a very spiritual person. Right? And then I thought, well, if you'd have asked me about spirituality 10 years ago, I would have gone, that's just woo-woo, right?
I wondered actually
I'm not into that.
What your reaction would be.
And a couple of my friends would laugh because I'm always like, oh, that's too woo-woo for me. But I've probably embraced a bit more woo-woo in the last couple of years. But I'm not a religious person.
Yep.
But as I was reflecting on this, I thought maybe I've been thinking about like spirituality in too narrow, like in a narrow sense.
Yeah.
Where if I think about the things that bring me joy, which is like a connection to, to nature, hanging out with other people, having a really strong purpose for the things that I do, feeling like I'm making an impact. Maybe I was being too hard on myself in my
Oh,
answers.
there's a lot of that in there.
So that was actually and look, probably more often lately as well. You use the word, the universe presented
Bumps me into
bumped
people.
you into people.
All sorts of people. Yep.
Yeah, I've probably and one of my friends laughed because I used I used that phrase in something I wrote the other day, and she's like, "Oh no, look out! She's accepted the universe."
Woo alarm.
Yeah, but and I don't know if it's acceptance, but I've probably spent a bit more time thinking about why certain things happen when they happen.
Yeah.
Without kind of just writing them off as just coincidences.
Yes.
So yeah, it was.
Yeah, one of the things that maybe I've thought a lot about this in the last few years, Rach, because I've been through a pretty, is what my father would say, character building few years. But I did read one thing that triggered my thinking around this was reading Sonny Bill Williams' biography written by Alan Duff. And he went through a very difficult period when he left the Bulldogs. But he then found his own spirituality, which happened to be Islam.
Right.
But one of the things that I thought, that's cool, is 5 times a day, Sonny Bill prays. And for me, now in the health app in my Apple iPhone, I've got prompts to show gratitude.
Right.
And love. And it pops up. And generally I do my sunrise meditation and I do a little prayer and as you were saying earlier, make sure I'm consciously connecting to earth, ocean, sky. And for me, spirituality, I honour whatever religion people are, but if you take away all the interpretation, they're all the same. In their purity, it's about believing in something bigger than yourself. It's about showing gratitude. It's about kindness. It's about service and purpose. And the reason it's in the wheel and will never come out of the wheel, because when life goes to shit, if you don't believe in anything bigger than yourself, you're going to have some serious problems. So, but it does, when I think about designing wellbeing programs in a corporate context, I thought, ooh, I wonder how that one's going to go down.
Well, maybe we can work on the questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is for me, one of the things I love is design and a belief that sometimes you got to just get stuff out there and iterate. And for me, that's lo-fi. Christian and I worked on this together. And my hope is that in every podcast, every corporate wellbeing program, every one-on-one coaching session, that constantly gets iterated.
Yeah.
We get insights into often how these things interact. So the MWE, the MWE, me plus we, and spirituality, they're very closely connected. But yeah, I think if nothing else, it probably gets a human being to go, oh, hadn't thought about that. Or maybe it might mean that I might, actually something I'm reading at the moment is Atomic Habits, which is about making tiny little changes and how that creates a multiplier. But doing those things in a way that's disciplined, daily. When you speak to all the elite sports people, rituals and daily habits are absolutely key. So thanks for doing the questionnaire. So when I think about the wheel, I think from a system perspective. So there are elements of the wheel that will help you ultimately live with more joy. And if I think about that from a science perspective and think about the nervous system, or the polyvagal system, you're moving from the red to the amber to the, normally they'd say green. I say blue because I'm a surfer, I like the ocean.
Yeah.
And it also relates to the Mojo colours, the sequence.
Yeah.
And that sequence is based on a song from Play School, which is actually about optimism.
Right.
And rainbows.
Rainbows, yeah.
But for me, the blue is fully conscious and it's flow state. Have you ever, you must have been in a situation, maybe in corporate or in your personal life, where you just were in that flow state and everything just seemed effortless and you were just so focused. Can you think of a time when that happened? And because I guess the idea is that how do you make it happen? How do you make it? How can you, and bring on that state at will?
I almost think about it in like in the counterfactual. So what I mean by that is you get there by eliminating the things that stop you from being there. So that's how I sort of think about it. So I know I can't, if I'm not well, like fit.
Yep.
So if I'm not exercising, if I'm not eating well, if I'm not sleeping, if I'm trying to do jam too many things in, I can't be there.
Yep.
And so it's sort of how do you, and some of those are easier to fix than others.
Yeah.
One of the hardest ones is jamming too many things in.
Yes.
And so you described, and I was blushing a little bit when you were describing me as a leader earlier, but being able to make complex things simple.
Simple, yeah.
One of the ways you do that is by ignoring the things that don't matter. And of course, everything matters, right? So you have to be really brutal in saying, there are 20 things we could do, but actually 3 things really matter. So they're the 3 we're going to do, and you have to put the other 17 aside.
And what you're doing there is stilling your mind and focusing.
You have to get the noise out.
Yep.
Yeah. And so I think I think that one about is probably the hardest, and it's probably the one that takes the most courage, because there'll always be someone that's attached to one of those 17 things. Might be your kids, might be your husband, might be your boss, might be, so, but once you practice it a few times, it's so freeing.
Well, that's the other thing about flow state for me. It's absolutely effortless. Absolutely effortless. And it takes, think about a car, you use about 1/20 of the fuel that you'd use otherwise.
I think one of the other things in that state, back to quietening your mind, is, and this probably comes in the mind part of your wheel, is, and I've worked with lots of people who waste a lot of energy on this, but is worrying about what other people think and letting that take up too much of your space. If that's taking up, that is so exhausting.
Yep.
So getting rid of that as well is worry about how you feel.
Yes.
Because that's more likely to be guided, like a strong guidance for the decision you're going to make and what you're going to do next and what you're going to prioritize, but way less about what other people think.
Yep. Yeah, when I did my research on David Galbraith, a woman asked him, what is well-being? And he said, quiet, connected. Because the noise up there is all the crap, the monkey mind, the what does that person think about me, and all these catastrophizing on things that don't actually even exist and probably won't happen.
Yeah.
And that's why stillness changed Tom Carroll's life. He nearly killed himself on meth, and then he found meditation. And people might think, oh, you're levitating Byron Bay hippies, you just want to go and meditate. It's actually, if you think about that in a language that would appeal to the corporate world, it's actually about attention and focus.
And everybody's got their own way to meditate. But you don't have to be,
No.
you know, sitting in a loincloth with your legs crossed, right?
Yeah.
Might do it in the shower.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or while you're doing a jigsaw puzzle. I think the connection piece too comes in different ways. I mean, like I was thinking about, like, one of my best moments in the last week was on the weekend. It was my oldest kid's birthday.
Yep.
And in the afternoon, the whole family was playing a board game.
So funny you say that. I'll tell you why in a sec.
And that is, to me, like, that's the best. No one's there under duress. Like, my kids are 17, 19, 22. They don't want to do it. I learned a long time ago you can't tell your kids what to do.
Yep.
They don't want to be there. They're not going to be there. Like.
And the reason I went, when you said that, is one of the ideas I've got for Mojo is a board game that that tests people. Because you can imagine if you sat with a bunch of 10-year-olds and said, guys, what moves you to the red? They'd know it straight away, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
You know, you go through mind, breath, sleep. Oh, when I don't sleep well, that definitely pushes me.
And
to
when
the
they're
red.
hangry.
Hangry, yeah. Well, my nemesis is sleep. You know, I've been measuring sleep for 2 years on my Apple Watch.
Yeah.
And I know exactly how much sleep I need to function well. I know how much I need to function optimally. And I know if I get a certain little amount of sleep, when that can lead to disaster. So sleep, you know, talk about atomic habits before daily rituals. For me, I've realised how important that is and how dysregulated I get when I haven't had enough sleep. And therefore I have some, like, there's about 10 golden rules of good sleep. A lot of it's around routine, having the same bedtime, wake up time, you know, trying to avoid screens and some of that stuff. But kids would know that. But unfortunately, I was saying before, everyone's sometimes just so overwhelmed. It's because there's all this stuff that pushes them to the red: alcohol, sugar, TV. You know, a lot of the advertising, the pace of social media. You know, I did a little experiment with the Tom Carroll episode, and I've been really resisting doing YouTube shorts.
Yeah.
Because I think, why the hell can't people sit down and just bloody listen to something? So I did a 4-minute thing, which was the Fast Five.
Yeah.
12,000 views. So I think over time our ability to maintain attention's been really compromised.
Yeah.
And that's why I think stuff that addresses that is going to have a huge effect on people's ability to self-regulate. But yeah, like you, I'm an optimist. I think there's plenty of ways we can support. But I think the other thing is, you know, as often as parents we say, oh, the kids shouldn't be on their social media, and then you're in a playground and mum's on the phone, the kid's 50 feet up on the monkey bars, and you think, well, we've sort of got to lead by example.
Yeah.
Anywho, shall we do the Fast Five?
Sure thing.
Rachel Slade.
Yes. Slightly nervous, yes.
Oh, this is, you know, we talked about fun before.
Yeah, this is fun.
This is fun. Favourite fluffy animal?
Okay. You know, I just talked about how it was my kid's birthday on the weekend.
Yeah.
He's 22, by the way.
Yes.
He has, he'll be embarrassed when he watches this, but I think all his friends know. He has a stuffed frog.
Yes.
Called Froggy. Very imaginative names. Now got one eye because he's had this frog
One-eyed Froggy
since he was 2.
Answers to the name of Lucky.
And he still travels with it. I'm talking, he went to Europe for 6 weeks, and this thing's like this big.
Yep.
He took it with him in his bag. So I've got a soft spot for Froggy.
Well, I think that's awesome. Shows courage and that ability to not give a shit what anyone thinks.
Exactly.
Favourite marine animal?
Oh, I'd have to say a dolphin.
Mm.
And I say this because they just always look like they're having the best time.
Oh, and they connect with humans.
Yeah, we see dolphins a lot when we're out fishing, and they're always...
Where do you see dolphins in Victoria?
No,
when you're
not in
fishing?
Victoria. Although I did see one when I was out on a paddleboard.
Oh, they're everywhere at the moment.
Yeah, I saw
the
one.
whales, the dolphins.
Yeah, I saw one down at Mount Martha. But I see them more often up at Port Stephens or in Lord Howe Island.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Excellent. You know, Sir Wayne Smith's favourite fluffy animal was a turtle.
Mm.
And when he told his mates that he'd seen a turtle, they did not believe him. They then said, "Oh, have you seen a giraffe lately, Smithy?" No. Best 3 buddies on a road trip?
It's probably my kids. Well, we drive up to the Blue Mountains a couple of times a year, which is a fair. We usually do it over 2 days.
Beautiful up there. For the non-Australian audience, the Blue Mountains.
The Blue Mountains,
stunning.
Yeah, absolutely stunning. Definitely give that a Google. Great hiking.
I know you're not into woo-woo, Rachel, but the Blue Mountains has a pretty cosmic energy.
No doubt. No doubt.
You must have sensed that.
Yeah. But they're good road trip buddies because they don't mind my singing. We'd, put on some...
What's your favourite genre?
On a road trip?
Yeah.
Oh, like anything I can sing along to. So it's probably 90s or 2000s.
Something I do on the bike a lot. Rock out.
Yeah.
It's fun. Okay. Well, your sons will be happy. I don't know if your husband will, but anyway. Go-to comfort food.
Oh. Why am I taking so long to answer this question?
All right.
Yeah.
When you're in Italy,
yes,
what was your favourite dish?
I had a lot of artichokes in Italy because they're in season.
Italian food, oh my God.
So I did eat a lot of artichokes and quite a lot of risotto because I don't cook it. So
don't they do food well? Like simple,
unbelievable,
fresh,
unbelievable.
Oh my God. Mojo Foodie's going to come out at some point, and it will be based on those principles: in season, know where your food comes from, keep it simple. Yum. Last question. When you've been out for, let's say you've gone out with a massive hike with your girlfriends, which I know you do on occasion. I think you did in
just done the Larapinta. Yeah.
No, prior to that it was Taiwan, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Taiwan.
Magical.
So you've been on a massive hike. What's the favourite food and beverage after a big hike?
It's always fizzy water. There's something special about fizzy water. Yeah, bubbles, fizzy
okay.
water. Yeah. This can sound...
Like Fanta or?
No, just like
sparkling
water. Sparkling water.
Yeah, okay.
I'm usually pretty hydrated, but still, but it's got to be cold.
Yeah.
The thing that happens on a hike is you're just desperate for something cold to drink. Yeah, so cold, fizzy water. Quite partial to a banana.
And if this were your last day on the planet, what would you eat apart from the banana?
My last day on the planet.
Yeah, man. You've got one more meal.
Okay, so I'd eat the. I've practiced this because we have this kind of, we call it like last meal on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wicked.
So it's 3 courses. Is that all right?
Totally.
Yeah.
You can go degustation if you like. You can have 15 like Tetsuya's.
The 3 courses. The first course, here's a plug. I'm not sponsored by this restaurant. Harriet in Melbourne. Amazing tuna.
Harriet
in Melbourne.
As in
Collins Street. HARRIOT.
IOT. Okay. Harriet.
They do this tuna tart for entree. Magical. I think for main, I'd probably have a really good steak.
Oh. What's your favourite cut of meat?
Scotch fillet.
Oh, me too. Oh, I like a fillet too. Fillet.
Oh, no, I fillet a bit too dry for me. I like a bit more, Scotch fillet.
Scotch fillet.
And then I'd have the Rockpool passion fruit pavlova for dessert.
Now, you know the Kiwis invented pavlova, don't you?
I do know that.
Oh,
My
really?
mother-in-law's a Kiwi, so...
Normally, the Australians all think they invented pavlova.
No, that would be my last meal on the planet.
Awesome. My nana used to make pavlova.
With
So
a
down on the
with
farm.
with a bottle of Tolpuddle Chardonnay from Tasmania.
Oof. So Shardy hasn't gone out of fashion.
Not in my books, no.
The oaky type. I like
Definitely.
the oaky type. Don't drink much anymore, but anyway. Well, that's cool. That gives people a real insight into the Rachel Slade, the non-corporate Rachel Slade. So, last question. Oh, actually, second to last. Nelson Mandela, I think, said you either win or you learn. And sometimes in life we acquire a bit of scar tissue, which I've learnt with hindsight that that's a really good thing. But tell me about a time when things did not go your way and really threw you. And what did you learn from it?
I mean, look, it's probably that time that we've talked about a couple of times today, which is, the sort of confluence of having my brother die and really tough time at work.
Yep.
And probably what I learned from that, first of all, it gave me a perspective about other people in that you don't ever know what's going on for other people. And so you should never assume what's going on.
You meaning your brother or?
No, I mean for anybody that you encounter in life.
Yep. Mind reading.
Yeah. And so actually, I used to do this before this time, but I added it back into leadership team meetings used to just do a check-in at the beginning of the meeting, which is like, how are you today out of 10? And what it was for was so you could say, like, I'm 4 out of 10. And if you wanted to, you could say why. Or you could say, I'm 9 out of 10.
Yep.
But it just gave a bit of context for whatever was going to happen, like, for the rest of that meeting.
Yep.
So if Andy's 4 out of 10 and he's seeming like a little bit off, I know he's a little bit off because he owned it at the beginning of the meeting.
Yep.
So it gave me that perspective.
Does that mean you wouldn't hammer him in the meeting?
Depends.
You'd just hammer him more gently, maybe.
And probably the other thing I learned was like just a different kind of resilience because I had all that going on, but I also had a lot of responsibility for not just outcomes, but people. And so not pretending that everything was okay.
Yep.
Because that, I think, is unhelpful as well.
Yep.
So it sort of gives you an opportunity, which might sound a little bit you want to be able to show a bit of vulnerability, but also show them that you can still show up.
Is it lonely, though, when you're at that, you're a group exec? I guess the only one above you is the CEO.
Yeah.
Does it feel lonely sometimes when you, like...
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah. But I think that's where, as a leader, I think one of the most important things to know is, like, first of all, you don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't have to have all the answers. In fact, it's better if you don't have all the answers. Because your job is actually to galvanise a team. And so in those moments, like, letting them be great, letting them hold you up a bit is a really good lesson as well. And knowing that they can. I mean, and I got maybe a little bit of a shock. I was always the person who was in negative leave. Right. I got a bit of a shock when I left NAB. I didn't quite realise how much negative leave I was in. It was all right.
Well done, you.
Yeah,
I say.
but the reason I make that point, of course, because I bloody love holidays. But the point I'm making is also acknowledging that you're not indispensable.
Yep.
And when leaders take leave, it gives somebody else in the team an opportunity to step up, and knowing that they, so you're going to be back and everything's going to be fine because you've got a great team.
Yep.
So I think, what I learned in through that situation, because of course, was I at my best? Absolutely not. But did I have people around me I could rely upon, not just to do the work, but to, keep the cultural machine running and help me out? I mean, yeah. And we got through it.
Yep.
You always get through it. It's just how bad, how hard was it? And what did you learn? I love that. I didn't know Nelson Mandela said that, but a woman who used to work for me said it, and I thought I stole it from her, win or learn, because I just love that attitude. Because people ask me, oh, what are the things you regret? And I always say, well, I don't regret. You just win or learn. Like,
well, yeah, in the last little while, I've become very interested in Buddhist teachings, and once you embrace non-attachment, life gets a whole lot easier,
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, this David Galbraith talks about it, when things are great, you're okay. When things are not so great, you're okay.
Yeah.
When we caught up in November, and this is a left field one, Rach.
Okay.
So sorry, we can edit it out if we need to. But you said you're keen to have another crack at one of the the tier 1 or the bank jobs. But now you've had time to just chill, and as you said, you're not so super busy, and you've just got space, and you're clearly not motivated by that anymore. What was that process that you went through?
I think it was really about getting less busy. And I think I was on this, not a wheel, but in a mode where you're like, well, I'm doing this. There's another, surely I've got another one of those to do.
Yep.
And then I got to the point where I was like, oh, actually, no. I don't, and I don't need to. Right? I don't need, back to the, what do I need in my life to be satisfying the things that are really important to me? And I got to the point where those things are, purpose and care and curiosity and fun. Like, I don't need to do that.
Hanging out with your kids.
Yeah. So that's where I got to.
That's cool.
Thanks.
Last one. So, I love this as a coach because it allows you to put your audacious heart dreaming in your present. So let's say you and I were doing another potty in 3 years' time.
Yeah.
And until the Tom Carroll episode, I used to say, what would you be most proud of? And I won't go into his answer.
Right.
You can listen to it on the podcast. But since that conversation, it's now, so Rachel, you're putting that future state in 3 years' time, we're sitting down here having a cup of tea and a yarn. And I say, Rach, what has given you the most joy? What are you going to be telling me?
It's a great question. Might have to be the food podcast. No, just kidding. Look, I think one of the things I think I'd be saying is the diversity of things that I've been involved in.
Yep.
Because I'm, purposely trying to construct, a world that's got a few different...
Design your life.
Exactly. Not perfectly, of course, because life happens around your design. So one would be the and secondly, and I don't know what this would be specifically, but being able to put my finger on the impact that I've had either on teams, businesses, or individuals.
Yep.
And then finally, what will have brought me a lot of joy is seeing, how my children navigate their way through university and into life. Yeah.
And just a last little thing that sort of definitely relates to purpose, and one of the commitments of the Mojo WellBeing Pty Limited in perpetuity is to give back. And so one of our principles is that every podcast guest nominates a for-purpose partner or a charity. Who are you? Who's your posse, Rachel?
Yeah. Look, there are lots of contenders for this, but the one, and I think it resonates really nicely with what you're doing at Mojo as well, is an organisation called -18. And what Minus 18 are all about is providing support and resources for young queer kids. And so, they organise events, they produce a whole lot of resources. And I know that, my kids certainly benefited a lot from that organisation.
Can be a really confusing and traumatic time, and
Yeah.
I know this from lived experience. So
And
that's cool. So we'll make sure we hook up with Minus 18. And what we do is we have a for purpose page on the website, and what that allows people to do if this podcast resonates for them, and or the work that Minus 18 resonates, the for purpose page shows the charity. People click and it goes directly to the donate page.
Oh, terrific.
So from a lean process perspective, no waste,
Straight
to donate.
Straight through.